Welcome back, everybody. It is Thursday, August 6th, 2026, and we left off on Genesis 7. Then the Lord said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate. 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate, and 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens also, male and female, to keep their offspring alive on the face of all the earth." What does this mean? Explain. Genesis 7:2 can sound confusing, especially because earlier Genesis 6:19 through 20 says Noah should bring 2 of every kind. The key is that Genesis 7 gives more specific instructions. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate. So what does clean mean? Clean and unclean are categories of animals connected with worship and sacrifice, and later Israel's dietary laws. A clean animal was acceptable for sacrifice to God. An unclean animal was not. Interestingly, Genesis is describing this distinction long before Moses receives the detailed laws in Leviticus. That was my next question. So I guess it was giving an example before it was even described, especially not in the book. So I guess can we assume then that God had passed on this dictation, but it wasn't recorded yet? Yes, that's a reasonable inference with one important qualification. Genesis tells us that Noah apparently knew the distinction between clean and unclean, but it doesn't tell us exactly when or how the full distinction had been revealed to him. In other words, we can distinguish between God revealing something and Scripture later recording that revelation in detail. Right, okay. All right, that makes sense. Verse 4, "For in 7 days I will send rain on the earth, 40 days and 40 nights. And every living thing that I have made I will blot out from the face of the ground." And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters came upon the earth. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him went into the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Of clean animals and of animals that are not clean, and of birds and of everything else that creeps on the ground, 2 and 2, male and female, went into the ark with Noah, as God had commanded Noah. After 7 days, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened, and rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. So that's interesting that, so this is saying that it wasn't just rain. I mean, it did obviously rain a lot, 40 days and 40 nights, but this is saying that water came up from underneath the earth as well. All the fountains of the great deep. Let's see. What does this tell us about the earth's infrastructure? Is this saying that water came up from under the earth as well? So it wasn't only rain that flooded the earth. despite popular depictions of the story. Yes, that's exactly what the text says. Genesis portrays the flood, not now in GBT. Genesis portrays the flood as involving water from below as well as water from above. The familiar picture of it rained for 40 days and 40 nights captures only part of the description. Genesis 7:11 deliberately gives two sources. All the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. Then Genesis 7:12 mentions the 40 days and nights of rain. So what is the great deep? The Hebrew behind the great deep is Tihom Rabbah, essentially the great deep or the great abyss. Tihom is especially interesting because it already appears in Genesis 1:2 when it says, "Darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters." So Genesis 7 seems to be drawing on the same picture of the world established in the creation account. In Genesis 1, God brings an ordered, habitable world out of a watery beginning. Genesis 1, 6 through 7 describes God making the rakia, which means expanse or firmament, and separating waters from waters, waters below from waters above. That makes the flood language striking. The boundaries holding those waters in their assigned places are opened. So my question would be, is this saying that there are waters even below our deepest oceans? Yes. If we're asking what Genesis itself seems to picture, there is a real sense in which the answer is yes, but there's an important distinction between the biblical picture and what we would call a literal underground ocean today. Genesis 7:11 doesn't merely say that the oceans overflowed. Yeah, exactly. It says all the fountains of the great deep burst forth. The word fountains in Hebrew, mayanot, normally refers to springs or sources from which water issues, while the great deep, Tihom Rabbah, refers to the vast deep. That wording naturally suggests waters associated with the deep that can emerge from beneath the inhabited surface. And this idea shows up elsewhere in Genesis. In Jacob's blessing of Joseph, Genesis 49:25 speaks of blessings of the deep that crouches beneath. Even more explicit is Deuteronomy 33:13, the deep that crouches beneath. So the biblical imagery does include deep waters beneath the land, not merely the visible seas. But here's the really interesting part. Modern geology has discovered that there actually is an enormous amount of water far beneath Earth's surface. Really, like a big water table, including at depths far greater than the deepest ocean trench. Really? How do they know that? That doesn't mean scientists have discovered the literal fountains of the great deep of Genesis, although maybe. The water generally isn't sitting in gigantic underground caverns like a hidden ocean. Instead, much of it is chemically incorporated into minerals in Earth's mantle. Wait, what? Instead, much of it is chemically incorporated into minerals in Earth's mantle. One particularly important mineral is ring woodite. Ring woodite. What is it with wood and like wormwood? We read about wormwood in Revelation. But anyway, found in the mantle's transition zone roughly 410 well, we'll use American metrics, 255 to 410 miles below the surface. The Earth is that's, I can't even conceive of how deep that is. It's a lot of rock. By comparison, the deepest part of the ocean is only about 7 miles down. Really? This is fascinating. So remarkably, the deepest ocean is roughly 7 miles deep. So the Mariana Trench that we've heard about, that I've heard of through YouTube videos, that's where that submarine went down and got crushed, I think. Anyway, the mantle transition zone containing water-bearing minerals is way beyond that, 410 to 660 kilometers. Researchers have estimated that if portions of that mantle contain roughly the inferred concentrations of water, the total amount stored there could be comparable to one or more of the Earth's surface oceans. Ooh, let's look at this. The upper crust. Upper mantle, mostly dry. Transition zone contains water. Lower mantle is dry. So it is literally like a water table. That ringwoodite element is most prevalent in that transition zone. I guess that's how it's able to slide so much. It's all lubricated. Ringwoodite may be carried to Earth's surface along with other minerals that form in the transition zone. I guess through eruptions, volcanic eruptions, stuff like that. Yeah, this is crazy. Bubbling under the ringwoodite reservoir. Volcanoes cause geological activity on the Earth's surface, which may affect areas deep underground. 3 times the amount of water found in Earth's oceans may be locked up in a mineral called ringwoodite. Hey, okay. We don't have to look at all of them. Okay, anyway, let's go back to the scripture. So that was verse 13. On the very same day, Noah and his sons, Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them, entered the ark. They and every beast according to its kind, and all the livestock according to their kinds, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh, in which there was the breath of life. And those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as God had commanded him. And the Lord shut him in. The flood continued 40 days on the earth. The waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed so mightily on earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. The waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep. And all flesh died. Okay, well, actually, I want to just real quick, because I know there's at this point there's been a lot of scientific discoveries to directly. Why is it doing that? Directly support this particular portion. Like they're finding little shrimps, up on Mount Everest and stuff like that, which is ridiculous because they're seaborne creatures. Tell me about some of the modern day scientific discoveries that support these passages. Yes, there are some fascinating modern discoveries that make the kind of catastrophic flooding described in Genesis much easier to picture scientifically. The key distinction is important, though. Modern geology proves strong evidence for enormous prehistoric floods but it has not established that a single flood. Yeah, sure, I got it. We now know truly enormous megafloods have happened for a long time. For a long time, geologists tended to emphasize slow processes acting over immense periods. Modern geology has demonstrated that extraordinarily violent floods can also reshape huge regions very rapidly. One striking example is the Zanclean megaflood. Geological and geophysical evidence indicates that roughly 5.3 million years ago, here they go with this stuff, Atlantic water catastrophically poured into the Mediterranean. Okay, that's not really, I meant more like, what I really wanted to see was those little shrimp that they found up there. Let me see if it can find that. Can you tell me about instances where we've found seaborne creatures high up on the mountaintops? If not, we'll just hop on back. What am I getting? Let's see. Yeah, this is one of those facts that sounds almost tailor-made for the question you're asking. Yes. Marine fossils have been found thousands of meters above present sea level, including in the rocks very near the summit of Mount Everest. Yeah, this is, okay. Yeah, look at that. Isn't that wild? That's so crazy. Geologists studying the Comalangma Formation near Everest summit have identified fossil fragments of trilobites, crinoids, which are marine animals related to starfish, ostracods, tiny aquatic crustaceans, and other marine organisms. Okay. Verse 21, and all flesh died that moved on the earth. Birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all mankind. Everything on the dry land in whose nostrils was the breath of life died. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. Okay, Genesis 8, verse 1. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind blow over the earth, and the water subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed. The rain from the heavens was restrained, and the waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days, the waters had abated, and in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that had made... At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her and brought her into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, In her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him any more. In the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. In the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then God said to Noah, "Go out from the ark, you and your wife and your sons wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth." So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him, every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth, went out by families from the ark. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, the Lord said in his heart, "I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seedtime and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night, shall not cease." Okay, so God's covenant with Noah. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took some of every clean animal. God was pleased with this. And the Lord said in his heart, "I will never again curse the ground because of man. For the intention of man's heart is evil from youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done, while the earth remains." What happened? It's giving me some trouble here. There we go. So I never read it for myself though, so I guess that's the danger of that. I always heard that God declared he would never again flood the earth, but this doesn't seem to imply that. Is that said somewhere else, or is that just poor interpretation that I received? Or that I had, I should say. Yes, you heard correctly. The explicit promise never again to destroy the earth by a flood comes a little later. Okay, so we just haven't got there yet. Okay. Okay. Genesis 9 makes the flood specific promise explicit. There's also an interesting nuance here. God does not promise that flooding will never occur again. Obviously, local and regional floods still happen. The promise is that there will never again be a flood to destroy all flesh, to destroy the earth. Right, okay. All right, Genesis 9, verse 1. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you." That's interesting. Okay, so but later on, obviously, well, let's ask about it, because obviously this is peeled back later in Levitical law, because they can't just eat anything. Why do theologians think that this was later repealed if it's viewed that way under Levitical law? Because obviously Jews could not eat every living thing, but only a select few things. Maybe not few, but you get what I'm saying. They couldn't eat every animal. Yes, you've spotted a real interpretive tension. Genesis 9:3 sounds remarkably unrestricted, saying, "Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you." Yet Leviticus 11 later tells Israel that many living creatures are not to be eaten. The usual theological explanation is not that Genesis 9:3 was repealed, quote unquote, by Leviticus exactly. It's that the two commands are given under different covenantal arrangements and to different audiences. That's true. Okay, in Genesis 9, God is speaking to Noah and his sons after the flood. In effect, to humanity as it begins again. The parallelism is important. As I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. In Genesis 1:29, plants had been given as food. Genesis 9:3 now explicitly grants animals as food. Oh, I see the difference. Okay. On the straightforward reading, therefore, humanity receives a broad permission to eat animals. There is one immediate restriction in the next verse. They must not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. Oh, okay. They must not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. So don't consume the blood. So they have to let the animals sanguinate them. I believe that's the term, is sanguinate, to drain the blood. Then why does Leviticus prohibit some animals? Because centuries later, according to the biblical narrative, God establishes the Mosaic covenant specifically with Israel. Okay, so that's the distinction. So just different covenants would be the overarching answer here. Excuse me. Leviticus 11 doesn't present its dietary laws as a new universal rule for all descendants of Noah. They're part of a law given to Israel. And Leviticus itself gives a theological reason for the distinction, saying, "You shall therefore separate the clean beast from the unclean. You shall be holy to me, for I, the Lord, am holy and have separated you from the peoples." That's Leviticus 20:25 through 26. That last phrase is especially significant. I have separated you from the peoples. So a common Christian theological reconstruction looks roughly like this. Genesis 9 applies to humanity generally. Animals are permitted as food. And then under the Mosaic covenant applies to Israel specifically. Only clean animals are permitted. And then, of course, under the new covenant, when Jesus came back, the dietary restrictions were then removed. So in that understanding, Leviticus doesn't reveal that pig, shellfish, etc. were intrinsically forbidden foods for humanity all along. Rather, Israel was placed under an additional covenantal restriction that other nations weren't under. Okay. Wait, let's keep going. It's got me on the slippery slide here, but here's where it gets really interesting. Genesis already knows the categories clean and unclean before Moses. Well, of course, because God gave it, especially if they were written in retrospect, that would make sense. So if Moses was the author, that would make even more sense. In Genesis 7:2, Noah is told, "Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals and a pair of the animals that are not clean." Let's see. Wait, sorry, got distracted by a comment. So someone could reasonably ask, wait, if Noah already knew which animals were clean and unclean, wouldn't Genesis 9:3 have been understood as every clean moving thing Well, whatever. I mean, okay. It is interesting, but I don't want to we're going to have to read all of that anyway, and we're not quite there yet. So we can dig further into that once we get to Leviticus itself, which is 2 more books away. Not the next book, but the next one. Okay, so where was I? Genesis 8. Wait, no, we were there. Genesis 9. Genesis 9, verse 4. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. And for your life blood I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it, and from man. Wait, what? But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. And for your life blood I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it, and from man. From his fellow man I will require a reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his own image, and you be fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the earth and multiply in it. So is this I guess this is saying if you murder, you will be murdered. In a very a crude interpretation of that. Is a crude interpretation of this that if you murder, then you yourself will be murdered, implying that perhaps God would protect you unless you engaged in violence, and then if you did, you brought those consequences upon yourself. But of course, well, I mean, it's nuanced, right? Because we know later on, like entire kingdoms will be slaughtered, or villages will be slaughtered. And it's not like everybody in those villages or what have you would be, were murderers. Yes, as a crude first pass interpretation, that is in the neighborhood, but I'd make one important adjustment. The passage sounds less like God will stop protecting a murderer, so eventually someone will murder him, and more like God holds the taking of human life accountable, and human beings may be the agents through whom that judgment is carried out. The key line is, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. The logic of the passage seems to be human life bears God's image. Human life, therefore, has exceptional value. Deliberately destroying it demands a reckoning. And notice the wording immediately before it. It says, I will require a reckoning. I will require a reckoning. God says this 3 times in slightly different forms. So the emphasis is not primarily on some automatic karmic mechanism, kill and you'll inevitably get killed, but rather on accountability for bloodshed. By man shall his blood be shed has consequently often been understood as establishing, or at least providing, a foundation for human judicial punishment of murder. In other words, God delegates to humanity some responsibility for answering unjust bloodshed. This is before the Mosaic Law, which makes the passage particularly significant in Jewish and Christian discussions of justice and capital punishment. Your idea does touch on another biblical theme, though. Violence tends to generate violence. Jesus later says something strikingly similar in form when Peter uses his sword. He says, "Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword." That's Matthew 26:52. But even there, I'd hesitate to turn it into a universal promise that God protects nonviolent people from being murdered. We know that's not true because, we see it all around. So, God allows free will. People have free will. So it's not accurate to say if you don't murder, you won't be murdered. That's not what it's saying. Scripture plainly contains innocent people who are killed, Abel being the extremely obvious example only a few chapters before Genesis 9. Yeah, that's a good example. In fact, Abel may be important background for Genesis 9. Cain sheds Abel's blood, and God tells Cain, "The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground." That's Genesis 4:10. Then after the flood, God declares that henceforth he will require a reckoning for human lifeblood. The theme is almost human blood cannot simply be spilled and forgotten. There's also an interesting tension with Cain. God actually protects Cain from being killed in retaliation. That's true, he did that. So Genesis itself makes it difficult to read 9:6 simply as murder someone, God takes your protection, somebody murders you. Therefore, I would therefore paraphrase Genesis 9:5-6 roughly as, human life belongs ultimately to God. If you deliberately take it, God will hold you accountable for it. And because every human being bears God's image, humanity is authorized and obligated to treat murder as an extraordinarily grave offense. Fascinating. Okay, so what verse was that? These were the sons of Noah. Wait, no, I passed it. What was that? Genesis 9:5, verse 8. Okay. Then God said to Noah, to his sons with him, "Behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you. As many as came out of the ark, it is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth." And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth, and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth." God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth." The sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the people of the whole earth were dispersed. Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. What? He drank of the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." He also said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. So what the heck? So I don't understand why I guess that was some sort of slight for him to be covered. Oh, because he told? Is that why? Hold on. Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became very drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. Oh, in his tent, not just outside. Okay, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Oh, so I see. So instead of Ham going and getting a garment and covering him and just not telling anybody, all he did was go and tell somebody else, but did nothing. I suppose that's why. Let's see. Explain the interaction here, why Noah reacted the way that he did. What did Ham do wrong? And what are the implications? I assume that's why, though. That strikes me as why. This is one of those deceptively short Genesis stories where a lot is happening beneath the surface. The text itself clearly contrasts Ham's response with Shem and Japheth's, but it leaves one crucial thing tantalizingly vague. Exactly what did Ham do to Noah? That ambiguity has generated several interpretations in Jewish and Christian tradition and in modern scholarship. The safest place to begin is with what the narrative itself emphasizes. So what happened in the tent? Noah plants a vineyard, drinks its wine, becomes drunk, and lies naked in his tent. His drunkenness has put him in an extremely vulnerable and dishonorable condition. Ham enters and saw the nakedness of his father. Then, instead of covering Noah, probably the reason. Then, instead of covering Noah, he goes outside and tells his brothers. That detail matters enormously because Genesis immediately gives us a deliberately exaggerated contrast. So Ham sees his father, leaves him exposed, and then tells the other brothers. Shem and Japheth refuse to even look. They walk backward, they cover him up, preserve his dignity. Okay. The narrator actually repeats that their faces were turned away and that they did not see their father's nakedness. That's a giant textual spotlight saying their treatment of their vulnerable father is the opposite of Ham's. So at the minimum, Ham's wrongdoing is not accidentally glimpsing a naked man. The problem is what he does with his father's humiliation. He sees his father in a shameful, vulnerable condition and apparently exposes that shame rather than covering it. Shem and Japheth literally cover Noah's nakedness and figuratively protect his honor. That distinction is probably the key to the passage. Yeah, I would agree. All right, so why would merely telling his brothers be so serious? Because we're reading this through a modern Western lens, if we think, okay, his dad passed out naked, Ham told his brothers, awkward, but why curse somebody? Genesis operates in a world where honoring one's father and preserving family honor carried enormous moral significance. There's also a recurring biblical connection between nakedness and shame. Think all the way back to Adam and Eve. After sin, they recognize their nakedness and cover themselves. Yeah, okay. I think that pretty much tells it. Okay, so we'll leave it there for tonight then, coming up on 45 minutes. So we'll pick it up tomorrow on... Wait, that was the end of Genesis 9. So we'll pick it up on Genesis 10, verse 1. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to drop a sub, share it with a friend. God bless you guys, and good night.